Talking about Chinese aggression and the aggressive steps we continue to see by China internationally, but also by their military and their military training. We're joined right now by former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs. Secretary Pompeo, let's get right to it here. We've got images that have been uncovered out of a desert in China that's been used for military testing before of weapons, and what we see in these images are direct images of what is the outline of a U.S. aircraft carrier, as well as two U.S. destroyers that we would assume they are utilizing to figure out how they would attack via air.
You know, Jordan, some of this is propaganda. That is the reason these images get out, is they want to create this narrative. But it also demonstrates an incredible capability and an intent. And those are the things we need to stare at when we're trying to think about how to confront the Chinese Communist Party. We need to make sure we understand that. And I hear folks say all the time, especially from the left and from the salons in Europe, hey, we don't want to go to war with China. Well, the best way to prevent a hot war with the Chinese Communist Party is to establish deterrence, to do the things you need to do to make sure that the Chinese Communist Party knows that it will be incredibly costly if they take actions that are adverse to the interests of the United States and of Europe and of the West. Capitals like Tokyo and Canberra need to do their part to establish in the minds of the Chinese Communist Party the resolve of the West to protect ourselves from Xi Jinping and his communist thugs.
Add this to the fact of the aggression already they're showing towards Taiwan. I mean, with its actual aggression, the most aircraft we've ever seen in Taiwanese airspace. So we had one of the Taiwanese leaders confirm that there were U.S. troops there on the ground training, which is not a bad thing, but it just seems like with everything, whether China's mocking us at the world stage, whether it's COVID-19 and not allowing the World Health Organization back in, or any other inspectors back in to try to figure everything out, and how culpable they might have been, or even if it was negligence to the level of criminal negligence, but they're not allowing those inspectors in. And they've also taken aggressive steps, not just in target runs, but of our allies like Taiwan that we've got defense agreements with.
Jordan, this is very serious. It's why the administration that I served in began to confront them in ways that were material and important to convince Xi Jinping that he needed to change course. For 40 years, Jordan, America turned the other cheek. We watched them steal our intellectual property. They were operating a massive spy ring from the Chinese consulate in Houston. I made the decision to close that down. President Trump supported that decision. We challenged the Chinese Communist Party in every venue, whether it was the stealing of our technology, the use of technology inside the United States to spy on the American people. We made clear our support for the people of Taiwan. We worked for the freedom fighters in Hong Kong. Every place that Xi Jinping continued to move aggressively, the Trump administration responded. I think they see the weakness in the Biden administration. I think they saw what happened in Afghanistan. They see the Iranians now moving in the Middle East in ways they didn't dare do when President Trump and I were serving. And I think Xi Jinping may well believe that this is his window. This is his moment to actually execute on the vision he has for a one world. And he'll begin with places like the islands of Taiwan.
I read an article, I'm not sure which publication it was, but it's respected and on International Affairs. It was just talking about the idea that he's no longer showing up at a lot of these international events. The Chinese president, he used to, they said, kind of feel the pressure to go and at least shake the hands and not to disturb the other leaders, but that was also a sign of how, now you can look at that two ways. When a world leader doesn't leave their country, you can think, is that because it's too dangerous to leave their country or their power struggle? But in his case, what they're saying is it's because it's a show of strength. I don't need to go actually shake your hands. I don't need to be in the same room with Joe Biden, President Biden, or other world leaders. I'm above that now.
Jordan, it's hard to know. It could be either. It could actually be both, that he feels threatened at home but emboldened abroad. And those often go hand in hand, Jordan. You'll see leaders that use this external effort to bolster their political strength back home. The fact that he didn't show up in Glasgow for the work that was being done on climate change tells you exactly how China is going to behave with respect to carbon. They're going to pollute. They're going to put carbon in the air. They don't give a darn what anybody else in the world does. They are using their economic might around the world to tell every country that America is in decline and America is weak, and you should stand with us versus the Americans because we're the strong horse. This is something that could cause our children, Jordan, to live in a society that looks much more like theirs than ours. We cannot let this happen. America's plenty strong enough to push back against us. It just takes American resolve, leadership, force structure to understand that our military has to be strong, and we have to develop the tools and weapon systems, both physical hardware and software, to push back against them. I've not seen much evidence of that from this administration. I pray that they begin to get this right.
Yeah, final question for you, Secretary Pompeo, is that it can seem overwhelming. We talk about this a lot when it comes to China. It's what would be the first 2 or 3 things that need to be done to get them under some kind of back to either respecting the United States or at least feel like they can't do whatever they want globally or at home domestically. I mean, what steps could be taken by even an administration like this to show those signals?
I would start the place the Chinese Communist Party started on economic issues. I would use the power of the West, India, Australia, Japan, South Korea, Europe, the United States. They make up 3/4 of the world's GDP. I would begin to create ties amongst those nations that developed economic outcomes that put real pressure on the Chinese Communist Party. China is dependent on the world, more than the world is dependent on China. They have almost no internal capacity for energy production, for example. We can put real pressure on the Chinese Communist Party using our economic power and force them to conform to the world's standards. We must do that, and then we have to show true strength. Ronald Reagan knew this. President Trump knew this. We have to deliver the peace that we all want. The prosperity that we all want comes from American and Western strength and not through appeasement and some idea that somehow if you treat them nicely or you invite them to the right venues, the right international organizations, that somehow Xi Jinping will change his stripes. That's just not in the cards.
Secretary Pompeo, is always great to have you on the team as our senior counsel for global affairs.